I think it should be up to society to decide when when is the ideal time to stop having compulsory education. I think that perhaps it might be a good idea because again, they need to be socialized.
When do
Uh,
you think that compulsive education should be stopped?
probably around 10 to 12 years old. I mean, I'm probably younger than most people would say.
Sure.
I would go with because I think that perhaps compulsory education should not. Let me finish. Let me say that compulsory education should not end, but a compulsory curriculum should end at that point. I think that once you're between 10 and 12, you should perhaps still go to school for a little while, but you should be able to choose entirely what you want. Like if you don't want to learn math anymore for a while, you can just stop learning math for a while and go somewhere else, or English, or something else.
Okay. I'm not going to be too forceful when I say this, but people need math, regardless of
I
what.
do
When me
agree.
and
I agree.
which is fine, but people need math. People need English, especially if they're an English-speaking country or whatever native-speaking country that they have. They have to have their version of what we would classify as English lessons. They need that. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to function in society properly. They're not going to be able to work where they need to work. They're not going to be able to do these types of things. Because even if you're
Certainly
doing it
now,
where you
yes.
decide to work,
Mhm.
no, even now.
Yeah, that's what I'm
There's
saying now, but I don't
yeah,
think
but
that unless
But
I'll let you.
even in your example of if we were able to have this idea that you proposed,
Mhm,
then even then, what if, say for instance, right,
mhm.
we've done what you said, between 10 and 12, you're able to do what you want to do. Does that mean
Afterwards, up until then,
fine?
you
Yeah,
have a.
okay, up to 12. Let's say 12. Let's say 12.
Mhm,
Up to 12, then after 12, does
mhm.
that mean that you would say that they'll be able to work in the mines? And I pick that specifically because that would be a job that would be able to go forward.
Okay, well, first of all, mining would probably be a lot more automated. I mean, sure, in the past, children did mining, but we don't. We have thankfully collectively decided that that is not a form of child acceptable labor. In fact, under 12 probably. In fact, 12 years old probably wouldn't do much of anything at all anyway. They might perhaps help around, but they probably wouldn't be up to any particular tasks. But they could be allowed to perhaps start an apprenticeship at such a young age. But I would first of all, I mean, a lot of people probably wouldn't drop math as much as we think now because again, education would not be forced on these people. Um it would be voluntary. And I mean, it does go to show that a lot of people don't like school or whatever. A lot of kids, given the opportunity, would take time off. But I really feel like we don't value enough the. Hold on, I need to close my window. We don't value boredom to the point that we actually should. That I think people, if kids were just 12 years old staying at home, I mean, sure, they could play video games all day, and that might be a problem. But in a society where education is just a part of life, that you can just go to school at any time, you don't need to pay for college, you just can pick up a class if you want, or just go to school and take some classes or something like that. I really feel like because again, education doesn't stop at 18. I mean, sure, we have secondary education, but there's a big divide between primary and secondary education in the world as it is today. So you sort of choose whether or not you want to go to school again if you can afford it. But since it would be free
Sure.
and encouraged, people would kind of just come and go as they please. I mean, you would potentially be educated instead of working. Like that would be your
Sure,
like
the
a nice
potential's
dream
there.
now. Yeah.
Sure, the potential's there. But my point is, say that they don't want to go into education. In your society that you've just painted, so to speak, to use the
Hmm.
broad brush,
Hmm.
sorry,
No worries. That's fine.
is a
That's no
case of
problem. Hmm.
it's a case of now that if you're 12 years old and you want to go into work, you're
Hmm.
now, in your opinion, saying that, yeah, they're allowed to go into work. Now, me personally, I
Hmm.
don't really think that 12-year-olds should be in a working environment. I don't really think that they should need to be. The only environment I think they should do is enjoying their childhood, whatever
I agree.
that may be,
Hmm.
whatever that may be. But in the society where you cut compulsory schools and
Mhm.
education, the reason why we go to 16 is because of there is so much to learn.
Mm. And I totally agree. So think of it like this. So imagine if at 12 you were given the option to take a gap year at 12 and you decided to, but a number of your peers didn't. And some of your peers did, but a number didn't. And then suddenly, you see them talking about things that you don't understand and you're starting to feel left behind. Would you
Sure.
not then feel compelled to rejoin them?
I don't
You've
know.
had your
Does that
childhood.
happen in school
Yeah.
already? Does that not happen in school already?
I don't think so because again, like you said, it is compulsory until 16 and sort of the meme of student life is to hate on school. Whereas
So,
Mhm,
just 1 second. Sorry.
mhm,
So you don't think that people that dislike science, for instance, wouldn't be able to talk with people that love science, for instance? Like if you're in year 10 and you've been studying science for quite a while and whatnot, or
mhm,
whatever, whatever the equivalent is,
mhm.
just before you leave high school. So if
Mhm.
you're at that point and you study science, you know quite a bit, but you're not that interested in it. Are you telling me that you would be able to have the same level detailed conversation as somebody that doesn't care about science than somebody that would?
I mean, I don't understand the question. Probably not. But
The
if you're
reason
not
why I do
interested,
that
I
is
don't see
drawing the
why you would.
parallel. The
Mhm.
reason why I do that is drawing the parallel of what you've just said about going away on holiday and learning something that somebody else doesn't know, because that happens all the time. People learn at different rates. People learn
Yeah.
different things because they want to.
Mhm. Well, no, well, not necessarily. I mean, yeah, somewhat, but I think that education is mostly again, it's based on testing more than
I
actually.
agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, so and also again because it is compulsory for so long, I also could be wrong too. I would be up to the democratic process. If people vote for school to stay longer, that's the way it is. I have no power. I mean, I would be outvoted, but
A
if
quick point of contention then.
I could
Do
potentially
you
move
think
to a different place that did it differently, but yeah.
exactly? A
Oh, okay.
quick point of contention, very, very quickly then.
Mhm.
How do you reckon that society in themselves, regardless of where you are in the world, has decided upon the arbitrary number of whatever number that they put down for school? Do you not think it
Um,
was decided democratically and via a government system?
I actually think it was more designed based on what they consider working age and the education you would need to work. So, and because that wouldn't be and maybe that's wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's the main reason that we have compulsory education is for factory workers and stuff, which is why it's sort of lagged behind in recent years, in terms of keep preparing people for the world as it is now. And I feel like if we took the whole reason for education being to get a job, if we took that away and replaced it with education for education's sake, I think that it would be a lot different and a lot more multi-age groups too, because people would stop at 12 and perhaps play and have a childhood for a while, and then they would decide, okay, I'm kind of bored now. I don't have much to do. Maybe I should go back to school again because my parents are encouraging it, my friends are doing it. It seems like a good idea, and grades wouldn't be so much based on, they wouldn't be grouped so tightly around an age. It would be just based on, like, you would based on what you want to do, A, and B, your sort of current um understanding so far. Like, you would take an entry test of how much you know already, and then or you could just say I don't know anything, and then you could just start over, and people and grades would be based on, again, education level rather than age. So you could potentially, it would be a lot more like college, but a lot sooner. And
Okay.
I feel like because it's so fundamentally different than how we do education right now, it might be a little hard to understand. It might be a little complicated and difficult to imagine, but I really feel like it would fall into place
No, I
rather
get
easily.
it. No,
I'm sure
no,
you do. Yeah,
I
I'm
get
just
it.
saying in general. Hmm.
I, I get it. The thing that I keep on coming back to is that you're saying that, for instance, if you're 12 years old, if you take a year out, then you should do an entry test. And the reason why you don't want the children to continue compulsory learning is because they're being tested. Now,
Well, no, it's because
again, I'm not
you're
trying to be a dick.
unnecessary. Yeah, go ahead. I don't take you as being a dick, and I appreciate that you say that you're not. So
Yeah,
I hope
I'm
you're
not
being
trying.
honest. saying that. You're not like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a dick, but you're a fucking moron, or something like
No,
that.
definitely not. No, definitely not.
Even if you're thinking,
I
I understand.
No, I don't. That's the thing with these types of conversations. I think
Mhm,
so many people come from so many different points of views, and a lot of people, when talking to you, would be like, "Well, you just want to change society because you hate society." I don't think that. I think you're trying to look for the best way forward and trying to work something out in your head where you think is the best way forward.
mhm.
Me personally, I disagree, but that's
Right.
society and democracy.
Precisely.
But the reason why I'd say I'm not trying to be a dick is because the reason why you said, right, we don't want to be testing these children all the way up past 12, but yet if they take a year out, we should do an entry test on them anyway,
Mhm.
kind of seems, to coin a word that I think is underused, counterproductive.
Yeah, no, I see what, or possibly even contradictory. I see what you're saying. I'm glad you've asked that. Are you finished? Was that your main
Yes,
point?
yes. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So, I see what you're saying. So, I think that grading shouldn't be based on testing. I think, but I don't see a problem with an entry level sort of how much do you know kind of a test. And as far as going back into school, I don't see like if you wanted to learn a language, like I mean Duolingo is an example. If you pick up a
Sure.
new language, it'll say, are you new to this language, or do you know how much, like, or have you had an
Sure.
experience with this language? And that would sort of be the test. If you say I have no experience with it, you would just go into the entry level thing. But otherwise they would say, okay, ask a few random questions of varying levels of understanding and
Sure.
see kind of where you're at. I don't, and then it
No,
wouldn't
I
be
get
graded,
it.
it would just be decided.
No, I get
Where,
it. But
mhm,
now, before I say this, I want to put a caveat in. I don't actually necessarily agree with the testing culture that comes from schools anymore at all. But
mhm,
to put that to aside for one instance, what do you think that the grading system is designed to be doing? Because from my understanding, it's
mhm,
literally what you've just described, to be able to
mhm,
give you an idea of what your education level is, what your understanding level is, and be able to transfer that into a quick, easy understanding for people that are working, or for people that are grading, or for people that are, assessing you. That, okay, this is quickly what we think that you know and what level that you're at. Here's where you should go. Here's what you should do.
mm. Well, here's what I've sort of gathered is the testing, the standard, especially standardized testing, is
Sure.
more so for sort of funding. Actually, it's to see if the school is producing enough A's that it's using its public funding. Again, private schools are probably different, but public schools I know do this
No,
in
they're
America.
exactly the same. No, the public schools and private schools are exactly the same. They're funded exactly the same by performance levels.
Mm, okay, but they're also, I mean, but private schools are also paid for to attend as well. So I think that there is some level
Yeah,
of
but they're
which is
paid.
generally why they are better.
Yeah,
They have
but they're
better
paid.
resources.
No, the reason why they're better is because the schools are generally considered better. Is because the people pay for top class teachers because they know what they're getting. Where in
Mm,
public schools they have to draw from a pool that's closest towards them. Now,
mm,
I don't necessarily agree or disagree with what section is there, but the
mhm,
reason why private schools generally do better is because they are paid for via how good the schools produce and give your education standards. So what they are saying is that if you get good A's, then you're probably worth 20, 30K a year. But if the
mhm,
public school gets C's, then it's probably only worth 10 or 12. What,
mhm.
arbitrary numbers, but you know what I mean.
Which seems kind of baffling to me in that if it's doing well, I understand rewarding it, but if it's doing bad, clearly the resources are not good enough and it needs better resources. So it seems like the funding should be going to places that are doing not well, not in the sense that they should be going into the pockets of the directors and the teachers into their paychecks, but the resources should be their funding should be expanded.
In a private
Which
school, that's what happens. It's
Yes,
the
but I'm talking about in
Unfortunately, it's
public
the
schools.
public school. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
was specifically talking about private
Mhm.
schools, and that's the reason why they generally perform better or
Yeah, exactly.
outperform.
And that's why I find it baffling that performance decides funding in terms of public schools. And obviously it's for private schools too, but they
Well,
also get
technically, it doesn't.
supplementary money anyway. Hmm?
But technically, it doesn't. Technically, it's both, but it's more to do with the income tax or the household taxes that are in its area. So if you don't have very high taxes in its area, then the school generally has really low funding. So it doesn't matter if the school's going to be really good and get a high federal for the US
Mhm.
funding, but the local funding is going to be so subpar that there's not much that it can do.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a problem and that should be addressed, which is why I feel like it would be addressed on in a more leftist system because it would be more, egalitarian and more focused
How?
on. Well, because education would be actually a very, while it isn't compulsory, it would be very highly valued because education produces good, smart citizens, and good, smart people produce good, smart things for the world. So
Sure,
education would be very highly valued and promoted, but it would not be compulsory because, again, people who are forced into education don't do as well as people who choose to be there, which is, I guess, sort of another. I don't know if that applies to private schools because, again, they are you choose to go there, but your parents kind of choose to put you in there. So maybe I won't bring that up. But again, people who do, I mean, that's what's great about college is if you can afford it, why, you go into what you want to go into.
sure.
Obviously, a lot of times what you want is based on what your paycheck will be, but not always. In fact, that's why we have liberal arts and things like that. People go into education for the sake of education, and I feel like that needs to be a lot more the standard. And that's why
Sure.
I promote it that way. Because then again, people would be, again, say you're bad at math for whatever reason, or English or whatever, you can still do that. And math applies to a lot of things, especially STEM things. But
Sure.
STEM would not be the number one thing like it is now. Arts would be just as valued as STEM and things like that. And math actually does apply very intimately with art, but people
Very much.
would learn art math a lot better if they're not so good at numbers math. They would understand ratios and things like that a lot more intuitively than perhaps numbers on paper. And again, that's just an example.
Sure.
um so people would go to, they would learn what they need and what they want to learn in order to contribute to society, and artistic contributions would be valued the same as scientific contributions.
Sure.
Hmm. So that's sort of where I'm coming from.
Sure, but that didn't address what I was
Okay, my mistake.
trying to get across to you, which was if you have an area that doesn't have a particularly great area, for instance, urban decay, so to
Hmm.
speak, you don't have many
Hmm.
people around. It's not drawing in a good number of teachers and things like that. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter what type of system that you have at that point, whether it's funded or non-funded, or whether it's done by volunteers or not. If the
Hmm.
area in itself isn't changed, then it doesn't matter.
Hmm. Okay, you're absolutely right. So a lot of those places would be boosted with, it wouldn't be money so much, but it would be industry and public works like parks and better living conditions and things like that. Those things would be very like high on the list of things to do to improve those areas because, and there are studies to
What
show
about
that.
crime?
Well, okay, so crime, I'm pretty sure I have, from my understanding, crime is a mental health and poverty issue. So if poverty is eliminated first and foremost, that's a lot of it. The rest goes entirely to
Explain,
mental health.
explain